And Lisa, what did you make of his move to represent himself just before this cross-examination? I want to remind the viewers, he originally had intended to represent himself. Then just before jury selection, he said, no, I'm going to get a lawyer. And then just before cross-examination, he said, no, I'm going to be representing myself. Do you think that there was a part of this that wanted to throw his wife off? I imagine it was pretty traumatizing for her to have to take questions from the defendant.
Oh, absolutely. The feeling it was a visceral feeling. She was angry. She didn't like to be in that position. Nobody would. When you've been victimized, kidnapped, tied up, sexually assaulted, and now you need to have a conversation with the assailant. Incredibly challenging. So yeah, I think, Allison, that the whole idea was more intimidation and potentially have the ability to trip her up because imagine they'd been together for 20 years. So I would imagine he knows how to push her buttons, but she didn't surrender. I didn't see any white flag, and I think she held up very well.
Absolutely. She did stay very calm. We noticed, of course, that she tried to avoid eye contact with him the whole time. It seemed like when she would accidentally look in his direction, she would even try to block her vision. It was certainly interesting to watch. Lisa, do you think that his behavior of Trevor Summers, the way that he's acting, the way he's representing himself, questioning both his ex-wife, now this deputy, do you think that it's hurting his case ultimately? What do you think the jury's going to think?
I do. I mean, everybody's getting a glimpse of how he really operates. A lot of times when Elisa made commentary that he goes on rants and she kind of tunes him out. She'd been with him for 20 years, so she knows his patterns. And this is another example of him being able to pontificate and ask questions and grandstand, so to speak, like Karen said. So I don't think so. I don't think anything that he has brought forward is going to help his case. It's just going to show the jury and everybody watching that this man, I think he's got a few screws loose. I mean, aside from being a narcissist and a rapist and a kidnapper and somebody who's going to attempt murder and suicide on himself, he's got a lot of issues. And I think he's just laying it out on a silver platter for everybody to see right now.
Yeah, it's certainly giving the jury a bigger window into who this defendant is as a person. Usually you have to wait until they take the stand if they do, but now they're getting to hear him talk over and over again. It's very interesting to watch. Lisa, I'd like to bring you in here and understand what the jury is learning about this alleged crime. We're only in day 2. We've already seen the victim testify and have her cross-examination by her ex-husband, the defendant. Now we're hearing from various police officers who responded to both the scene and to her home where she originally went missing from. What do you think the prosecutors are trying to do in laying the foundation for this alleged crime?
I think the most important piece we got in all of this was the fact that Arden, 14 years old, actually drove from that location. We also discovered, and which we already knew because Arden already told the jury when she was on the stand that she did open the window for her father, and they were able to find that that window was disturbed, the screen was outside. I think just as far as what they were collecting at the scene, they were still pretty much in the dark. They didn't know what was going to be important evidence for them to secure and take back with them. And they ended up going back again later when they received more information from the children. And once the apprehension and the arrest, it resulted in arrest, to go back and get more that they felt would tie the defendant to the crime.
All right, Lisa, just before the end of the show, I'd like to ask you about this witness testimony that we just saw the opening of. This was the nurse practitioner who looked at the victim after this event. What did you make of her testimony, and just how important is it for the jury to understand all elements of that examination?
Extremely important. You need to do the interview, and she's an RN. She knows how to collect the evidence, how to store the evidence to make sure that it can be tested later on. We know that she did take a shower after the 2 alleged rapes and sexual assaults. So it would be interesting as we go further to find out if they were able to find anything, any residue or any of the sperm that belonged to her husband.
Right, okay. Well, that was her ex-husband now, and it was a pretty crazy day in court. That's all the time that we have in our show today. I'd like to thank you, Lisa Lockwood, and of course to Karen Felicia Nance as well for joining us on the afternoon session. Make sure you log on to Law and Crime's YouTube channel to find all of our live trials, including this one, the trial of Trevor Summers, which is continuing well into the evening tonight. Have a great one. Once again, I'm Allison Hall. Thank you so much for joining us on Law and Crime.